The Late Night Truth. The Late Night Truth. Part 1. Suspicions. The kitchen clock read 6:47 p.m. when Sarah's phone buzzed with the text that would change everything. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. She stared at the message from David, her husband of 8 years, and felt that familiar knot form in her stomach. This was the third time this week. The third time he'd sent almost the exact same message, word for word, as if he'd saved it as a template. Sarah set down the wooden spoon she'd been using to stir the pasta sauce and leaned against the counter. The kitchen smelled of garlic and basil, warm and inviting, a meal that would now go mostly uneaten. Again. She'd stopped making elaborate dinners weeks ago, defaulting to simple pastas and salads that could be easily reheated. What was the point of spending hours cooking when she'd end up eating alone, scrolling through her phone while the TV murmured in the background? The sauce bubbled gently, and she turned down the heat. Through the window above the sink, she could see the Hendersons' house across the street, their living room glowing with warm light. She watched as Tom Henderson walked past the window, carrying what looked like a toddler on his shoulders. Jennifer appeared a moment later, laughing at something. They looked happy. Normal. When had things stopped feeling normal? Sarah picked up her phone again and reread David's message. Working late. He was a senior accountant at Morrison & Fletcher, a mid-sized firm downtown. Tax season had ended months ago, but he kept insisting there were special projects, year-end reviews, complicated audits that required his attention. She'd believed him at first. David had always been dedicated to his career, sometimes frustratingly so. But lately, something felt off. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the way he'd started dressing differently. Sharper suits, a new cologne she hadn't bought him, fresh haircuts every 2 weeks instead of his usual monthly trim. It was how he'd become protective of his phone, taking it with him even when he went to the bathroom. It was the distance she felt when they were together, like he was physically present but mentally somewhere else entirely. Sarah's best friend Monica had noticed too. Just last week, over coffee at their favorite cafe, Monica had given her that look, the one that said she wanted to ask something but wasn't sure she should. "What?" Sarah had finally said, setting down her latte. Monica had hesitated, stirring her cappuccino slowly. "How are things with David?" "Fine," Sarah had answered automatically. "Why?" "I don't know. You just seem, distant lately. Both of you. At the barbecue last month, you barely talked to each other." Sarah had laughed it off, made excuses about work stress and busy schedules. But Monica's words had planted a seed, and now that seed was growing into something dark and twisted in her mind. She walked to the living room and picked up her laptop from the coffee table. The family plan. They'd switched to a family phone plan 2 years ago to save money, which meant she had access to all the account features, including, she'd recently discovered, location services. Sarah had never been the type to snoop. She'd always believed in trust, in giving people their privacy, but desperation made people do things they never thought they would. She'd checked his location twice before. Both times he'd been exactly where he said he'd be, at the Morrison & Fletcher building downtown. It had made her feel both relieved and guilty. Tonight, though, that knot in her stomach felt tighter than ever. She opened the phone carrier's website and logged into their account. Her hands felt clammy as she navigated to the family locator feature and clicked on David's phone. The page loaded slowly, the spinning wheel seeming to mock her anxiety. Then the map appeared. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The blue dot representing David's phone wasn't downtown. It wasn't at Morrison & Fletcher. It was on the other side of the city, in a neighborhood she barely knew. Riverside Heights, an upscale area known for its trendy restaurants and boutique hotels. Her heart hammered against her ribcage. There had to be an explanation. Maybe he had a client meeting. Maybe Morrison & Fletcher had opened a new office. Maybe dash. She zoomed in on the map, and the exact address appeared, 2847 Riverside Drive. With trembling fingers, she typed the address into a new search window. The results loaded instantly, and Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. The Riverside Inn, boutique hotel and suites. Not a restaurant, not an office building. A hotel. Her husband was at a hotel. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the screen. The blue dot pulsed gently, mockingly, marking his location with absolute certainty. She refreshed the page. The dot stayed exactly where it was. She felt like she might be sick. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and she gripped the edge of the couch to steady herself. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. An affair. It had to be an affair. Why else would he lie about working late and go to a hotel? But David? Her David. The man who'd proposed to her on a rainy Tuesday evening in their tiny apartment, who cried at their wedding, who brought her coffee in bed every Sunday morning, who'd held her hand through her father's funeral last year. Then again, when was the last time he'd brought her coffee in bed? She couldn't remember. Weeks? Months? Sarah's phone buzzed, making her jump. Another text from David. Probably won't be home until 10 or 11. There's leftover chicken in the fridge if you're hungry. The casualness of it made her feel sick. He was lying to her, texting her sweet nothings while he was at a hotel with who? Someone from work? Someone he'd met online? How long had this been going on? Her shock was rapidly transforming into anger. Hot, burning anger that made her want to scream, to throw something, to drive straight to that hotel and confront him. She imagined bursting into whatever room he was in, catching him red-handed. The thought was both satisfying and terrifying. But another part of her, the part that still desperately wanted to believe there was some other explanation, made her hesitate. What if she was wrong? What if there really was some legitimate reason he was there? She looked at the map again. The dot hadn't moved. Sarah made a decision. She grabbed her car keys from the hook by the door, shoved her phone into her purse, and headed for the garage. She couldn't just sit here imagining worst-case scenarios. She needed to know the truth, whatever it was. Part 2. The drive. The evening traffic was lighter than usual as Sarah navigated through the city streets toward Riverside Heights. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles had turned white, and she forced herself to relax her grip. The last thing she needed was to get into an accident while driving in this state. Her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept trying to think of innocent explanations. Maybe the firm was hosting a client event at the hotel. Maybe David was meeting a potential client there for drinks. Maybe ... But if it was work-related, why would he lie about being at the office? Why not just tell her he had a client meeting at a hotel? They'd always been honest with each other. At least, she'd thought they had. Sarah stopped at a red light and glanced at her phone in the cup holder. Part of her wanted to check the GPS again to see if he'd moved, but she resisted the urge. She'd know soon enough. The Riverside Inn was only 10 minutes away now. The light turned green, and she pressed the accelerator, perhaps a bit too hard. The car lurched forward, and she took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She needed to stay rational, to observe before reacting. Maybe she'd get there and find him in the hotel lobby, perfectly visible, talking to a group of suited business people. Maybe she'd feel like an idiot for ever doubting him. But maybe she wouldn't. The neighborhoods grew progressively nicer as she drove. Modest houses gave way to larger homes with manicured lawns, then to the mixed-use developments of Riverside Heights, sleek apartment buildings, upscale shops, and trendy restaurants. The Riverside Inn was supposedly one of the nicest boutique hotels in the city, the kind of place where rooms started at $300 a night. Why would David be there? Sarah's phone rang, startling her so badly she almost swerved. She glanced at the screen. Monica. Of course. Monica always seemed to have a sixth sense for when Sarah was in crisis. She answered using the car's Bluetooth. Hey. Hey yourself, you sound weird. What's wrong? Sarah hesitated. Saying it out loud would make it real, but she needed someone to know where she was, just in case. I'm in the car. At this hour? Where are you going? David said he was working late, Sarah began, her voice sounding strained even to her own ears. But I checked his location, and he's not at his office. There was a pause. Where is he? A hotel, the Riverside Inn. Monica's sharp intake of breath was audible. Oh, Sarah. I know what it looks like, but maybe there's an explanation. Honey, are you going there? To the hotel? I'm almost there now. Wait, by yourself? Sarah, maybe you should… I need to know, Monica. I can't just sit at home wondering. I need to see with my own eyes. Okay. But be careful. And call me after, okay? No matter what you find. Promise me. I promise. Do you want me to meet you there? I can leave right now. No, Sarah said quickly. I need to do this alone, but thank you. After they hung up, the car fell silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional swish of other cars passing by. Sarah's stomach felt like it was full of lead. She thought about the last few months, searching her memory for clues she might have missed. Had David seemed guilty? Distant? He'd definitely been distracted, but she'd attributed that to work stress. He'd been showering more often, sometimes twice a day. Was that suspicious or just a coincidence? And their sex life? It had definitely declined. They used to make love several times a week, but lately it was more like once a week, if that. David always seemed tired, claiming the long hours at work were exhausting him. She'd been understanding, supportive even. What a fool she'd been. Or maybe she was being a fool right now, jumping to conclusions, letting her imagination run wild. Maybe she should turn around, go home, have a rational conversation with her husband when he got back. Maybe .. But she was already here. The Riverside Inn loomed before her, a beautiful modern building with large windows and elegant architecture. Soft lighting illuminated the entrance, where a uniformed doorman stood at attention. The valet parking area had several luxury cars, BMWs, Mercedes, even a Tesla. This was clearly a high-end establishment. Sarah drove past the entrance and parked on the street half a block away. She sat in her car, engine still running, staring at the hotel. David's car had to be nearby. She scanned the visible parking areas but didn't see his silver Accord. He'd probably used the valet service. Her phone was in her hand before she realized she'd grabbed it. She opened the GPS app again. David's location still showed him at the hotel. As she watched, the blue dot moved slightly. He was moving inside the building. This was it. This was her moment to decide. She could drive away, pretend she'd never checked his location, confront him later when her emotions weren't running so high. Or she could walk into that hotel and face whatever truth was waiting for her. Sarah thought about the wedding vows they'd exchanged 8 years ago, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. She'd meant every word, but those vows also implied honesty, fidelity, trust. If David had broken his vows, didn't she have a right, even an obligation, to know? She turned off the engine. Part 3. The hotel. The evening air was cool against Sarah's flushed face as she stepped out of her car. Her legs felt unsteady, but she forced them to move, one foot in front of the other, toward the hotel entrance. The doorman smiled and opened the door for her with a pleasant, "Good evening, ma'am." She managed a weak smile in return and stepped inside. The lobby was exactly what she'd expected from a boutique hotel, sophisticated and intimate. Warm wood tones mixed with plush velvet furniture in deep blues and grays. Soft jazz music played from hidden speakers. Abstract art decorated the walls, and a massive arrangement of fresh flowers sat on a round table in the center of the space. The whole place smelled like expensive candles and money. Sarah paused just inside the entrance, scanning the lobby. A few well-dressed people sat in the lounge area to her right, having quiet conversations over cocktails. To her left, the front desk stood empty except for a single clerk typing on a computer. Straight ahead, she could see the elevators and a hallway that presumably led to the restaurant or conference rooms. No sign of David. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the lobby could hear it. She pulled out her phone and checked the GPS again, trying to look casual. The blue dot showed David somewhere deeper in the hotel. The GPS wasn't precise enough to tell her exactly where. It could be a room upstairs, the restaurant, or one of the event spaces. She needed to search the public areas first. If he was just having a legitimate work meeting, he'd probably be in the restaurant or bar. Please let him be in the restaurant or bar. Sarah walked toward the lounge area, keeping her eyes open. Soft lighting made it hard to see faces clearly, but she systematically scanned each seating area. A couple in their 60s sharing a bottle of wine. A lone businessman on his laptop. 3 women laughing over martinis. No David. She walked past the lounge to a hallway where elegant signs pointed to various hotel amenities. The restaurant, called Riverside Grill, was to the left. A small bar called The Library was to the right. Conference rooms were on the lower level. Sarah headed for the restaurant first. The hostess stand was unattended, but she could see into the dining room, an upscale space with white tablecloths and candle-lit tables. It was moderately busy, maybe half full. She walked along the perimeter, pretending to look for someone, scanning each table carefully. Not there. The bar, then. The library was smaller, dimmer, with leather chairs and brass fixtures designed to evoke an old-world study. About a dozen people occupied various seats. Sarah's eyes adjusted to the low light as she checked each face. Still no David. She stood in the doorway, feeling lost. If he wasn't in any of the public spaces, that left only 2 options. He was in a conference room for a work event, or he was in one of the guest rooms. One of those options she could live with. The other would destroy her. Sarah pulled out her phone again, hands shaking now. The blue dot sat there, taunting her. She expanded the map, trying to get more precision, but the GPS could only narrow it down to somewhere within the hotel building. She needed to make a decision. She could ask at the front desk if there were any events tonight, any Morrison and Fletcher gatherings. That was the rational thing to do. Or she could check the conference rooms herself. The conference rooms. Yes, that made sense. Sarah found the stairs down to the lower level. Her footsteps echoed on the marble steps, and she became hyper-aware of every sound. The click of her shoes, the rustle of her jacket, her own breathing. The lower level was quieter, with carpeted hallways and subdued lighting. Signs directed her to various conference rooms, the Riverside Room, the Heights Suite, the boardroom. She walked down the corridor, checking each door. Most had small windows or were partially open. The Riverside Room was empty, chairs pushed against the walls, clearly being set up for a future event. The Heights Suite was locked, dark. The boardroom was... Sarah froze. Through the small window in the door, she could see the boardroom was occupied, but not with a business meeting. The lights were dimmed, and she could make out the shape of a presentation screen at one end of the room, but that wasn't what made her heart stop. There were balloons, colorful balloons tied to chairs. And were those streamers? And a banner? She stepped closer to the window, pressing her face near the glass to see better. The banner read something, but she couldn't make out the words from this angle. What kind of business meeting had balloons? The door suddenly opened, and Sarah jumped back. A young woman in hotel staff uniform emerged, carrying an empty tray. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you," the woman said with a smile. "Are you here for the party?" Sarah's mind went blank. The party? The surprise party? For David? The woman gestured toward the room. "They should be bringing him down any minute now. You're not too late." The world seemed to tilt. "Surprise party?" Sarah repeated dumbly. "Yes, for his promotion. Are you a colleague? Head on in, everyone's already here." The woman walked past her down the hallway, leaving Sarah standing alone, utterly confused. Promotion? What promotion? With trembling hands, Sarah pushed open the door to the boardroom. Part 4. The Truth. The room was transformed. What was clearly usually a standard conference space had been decorated with blue and silver balloons, streamers, and that banner she'd seen, now clearly visible, that read, "Congratulations, David, partner at last." About 20 people filled the room, all holding drinks, chatting in small groups. Sarah recognized some of them, David's colleagues from Morrison and Fletcher. There was Janet from accounting, Tom from audit, and wasn't that Mr. Morrison himself, the senior partner? Everyone turned to look at her when she entered. The conversations died down. "Can I help you?" a woman asked, approaching her with a friendly but confused smile. Sarah recognized her as Christine, David's direct supervisor. Sarah's voice came out as a croak. She cleared her throat. I'm Sarah, David's wife. Christine's face lit up with recognition and delight. Sarah! Oh my goodness, of course. David will be thrilled you're here. But wait, how did you know? This was supposed to be a surprise. Sarah felt like she was underwater, everything muffled and strange. I didn't know. I came. Well, you're right on time. They're bringing him down from upstairs any second now. We sent him up to Mr. Morrison's suite under the pretense of looking at some contracts. But really, we just needed to get him out of the way while we set up. Christine laughed. The look on his face is going to be priceless. His suite? Sarah managed. Mr. Morrison keeps a permanent suite here for out-of-town clients. Very handy for situations like this. Oh, here. You should hide with everyone else. Quick, behind the AV equipment. Before Sarah could process what was happening, Christine had grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a large presentation screen where several other people were crouched, giggling. Someone handed her a noisemaker. The lights dimmed even further. Shh! I hear them in the hallway, someone whispered excitedly. Sarah's mind was reeling. A promotion. A surprise party. David was being made partner. That's why he was here. That's why he'd been acting strange, dressing nicer, not for an affair, but because he was being groomed for partnership. The late nights weren't trysts. They were probably actual work, preparing for his new role. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to cry. She'd almost destroyed everything because she'd jumped to the worst possible conclusion. Relief flooded through her, mixed with shame and embarrassment. Thank God she hadn't confronted him, hadn't made a scene based on nothing but her own insecurities. The door opened, and the lights flicked on. Surprise! The room erupted in cheers and noisemakers. Sarah added her own voice to the chaos, stepping out from behind the screen with everyone else. And there was David, standing in the doorway, his eyes wide with genuine shock. Mr. Morrison stood behind him, grinning broadly. For a moment, David just stood there, taking in the decorations, the people, the banner. Then his eyes found Sarah's, and something complicated crossed his face. Joy, surprise, but also something else. Confusion? Concern? He quickly recovered, laughing and accepting hugs and handshakes from his colleagues. People swarmed around him, congratulating him, patting his back. Sarah hung back, letting him have his moment. She felt emotionally exhausted, wrung out from the roller coaster of the past hour. Speech! Speech! Someone called out. David held up his hands, still looking dazed. I honestly don't know what to say. I had no idea. This is incredible. Thank you all so much. 8 years you've been with us, Mr. Morrison said, raising his glass. And it's been clear for a while now that you have what it takes to be a partner in this firm. Your dedication, your attention to detail, your client relationships, all exemplary. I'm proud to officially welcome you as the newest partner of Morrison and Fletcher. More cheers. David's face flushed with pride and emotion. Sarah felt a surge of affection for him, mixed with lingering guilt over her suspicions. After the toasts, people began mingling again. Sarah finally made her way through the crowd to David's side. He saw her coming and excused himself from the conversation he was having. Sarah, he said, pulling her into a hug. What are you doing here? Did someone tell you? She hugged him back, pressing her face against his shoulder. No, I wanted to surprise you. He pulled back to look at her, and she could see the question in his eyes. But how did you even know I was here? I thought. I'll explain later, she said quickly. I'm just so proud of you. Partner! David, this is amazing. He smiled, but there was still something guarded in his expression. We should talk. Not here, but soon. Okay, Sarah agreed, though a small tendril of worry curled in her stomach. What did that mean? But then Janet was pulling David away to introduce him to someone, and the party continued around them. Sarah accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and tried to relax, to enjoy the celebration. Everyone was so happy, so genuinely pleased for David. She chatted with colleagues she'd met at various firm events over the years, accepting their surprise at her presence, deflecting questions about how she'd known to come. The party lasted another hour. There was a cake, chocolate with champagne buttercream, and more toasts. Someone had put together a slideshow of photos from David's time at the firm, set to upbeat music. Sarah watched her husband laugh and joke with his colleagues, saw how respected he was, how valued. She felt proud and grateful, and still slightly sick about her earlier suspicions. Finally, the party began to wind down. People started saying their goodbyes, heading out. Mr. Morrison approached David and Sarah, shaking both their hands. "I know this is sudden," he said to David, "but I wanted to tell you in person. We'll discuss the details on Monday, compensation, new responsibilities, all of that. But I wanted you to know tonight, wanted to celebrate. You've earned this." "Thank you, sir. Truly, this means everything to me." After Morrison left, Christine came up to them. "David, before you go, we need you to stop by the office tomorrow, just for an hour or so. There are some contracts that need your signature, partnership papers, that sort of thing. Would noon work?" "On a Saturday?" David asked. Christine made an apologetic face. I know. But we're trying to make the announcement first thing Monday morning, and we need everything finalized. Just an hour, I promise." "Sure, of course. Noon tomorrow." Finally, they were alone in the parking lot. David had used the valet service, and they waited together for his car to be brought around. The night air was cool and pleasant, and Sarah could hear the sound of the nearby river that gave this neighborhood its name. "So," David said quietly, "are you going to tell me how you really ended up here tonight?" Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Let's talk in the car." "Your car or mine?" "Yours. Mine's parked down the street. We can get it tomorrow." The valet brought David's Accord, and they climbed in. David didn't start the engine right away. He just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. "Tell me," he said. Sarah took a deep breath. "You've been acting different lately. Distant. Working late all the time. Or saying you were. And I got worried. I checked your location on the phone app, and when I saw you were at a hotel..." She trailed off, unable to finish. David turned to look at her, his eyes widening with understanding. "You thought I was cheating on you." It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded miserably. "I'm so sorry. I know how it sounds. I know I should have trusted you, but I couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong." David was quiet for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. Not a happy laugh, but a hollow, bitter sound. "Oh, Sarah." "I'm sorry," she said again. "I know it was stupid." "No," David interrupted. "You weren't wrong." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. "What?" Part 5. Confessions. David started the engine but didn't put the car in gear. He just sat there, staring out the windshield at the hotel entrance, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. "What do you mean I wasn't wrong?" Sarah's voice came out sharp, panicked. "David, what are you saying?" He closed his eyes. "I'm not having an affair. I need you to know that first. I would never..." His voice cracked. "I would never do that to you." "Then what?" "I've been lying to you." He opened his eyes but still didn't look at her. "For months now. About the late nights, about work, about a lot of things." Sarah felt like the ground was dropping away beneath her. "I don't understand." David finally turned to face her, and she was shocked to see tears in his eyes. "I'm in trouble, Sarah. Financial trouble. We're in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" He took a shaky breath. "You remember my brother, the situation with Tyler last year?" Sarah did remember. David's younger brother Tyler had gotten into some legal trouble, something to do with unpaid taxes and potential fraud charges. David had been stressed about it at the time, but he'd told her it was handled. "I thought that was all sorted out." "It was. Mostly. But it cost more than I told you. A lot more. Tyler needed a lawyer, a good one, and our mom couldn't afford it. She was going to lose her house if Tyler went to prison because she'd co-signed on some of his business loans. It was a mess. How much? Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. $60,000, between the lawyer fees, the settlement, and helping Mom keep the house. Sarah felt like she'd been punched. 60,000? David, where did we get $60,000? Our savings. The emergency fund. And I took out a loan. A personal loan with a pretty high interest rate because I needed the money fast and didn't want to tell you what it was for. Why wouldn't you tell me? We're married. We should make these decisions together. I know, David's voice rose. I know that. But you'd already been through so much with your dad passing away, and I knew how you felt about Tyler. You've never really trusted him. I thought I could handle it myself, pay it back before you noticed. I picked up extra projects at work, took on more clients. That's why I've been working so much. The late nights have been real, Sarah. I've been trying to dig us out of this hole. Sarah's mind was racing, trying to process this information. So the promotion is real too, and it's going to help. The partnership comes with a significant salary increase plus profit sharing. I was going to tell you everything once it was official. I was going to explain that yes, I'd made some bad decisions, but I'd also been working to fix them, and now things were going to be okay again. But I still don't understand. If you've been working actual late nights, then why all the secrecy? Why not just tell me you were taking extra projects? David was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I've also been picking up freelance consulting work, side jobs, under-the-table stuff that... He paused. That technically violates my employment contract with Morrison and Fletcher. Sarah felt cold. What are you saying? My contract has a non-compete clause. I'm not supposed to do any outside accounting work without the firm's approval, but I needed more money than the extra projects at work could provide. So I've been doing freelance work on the side. Nothing that competes with our firm's clients, nothing illegal, but definitely against my contract. If Morrison found out before I made partner, they could fire me. Jesus, David. I know how bad this sounds, but I was desperate, Sarah. We were drowning and I was trying to keep us afloat without pulling you under with me. He finally looked at her fully, tears now streaming down his face. And the worst part is that some of those late nights, I wasn't at the office. I was at the public library, using their internet because I didn't want you to see the websites I was visiting on our home computer. Tax prep sites, loan sites, budget calculators. I've been living this double life, but not the kind you thought. I've just been trying to save us. Sarah sat in stunned silence, trying to absorb everything he'd told her. Her husband hadn't been cheating on her. He'd been protecting her. Or at least, that's what he'd thought he was doing. But in the process, he'd lied to her repeatedly, made major financial decisions without her, and put his entire career at risk. Say something, David pleaded. Please. I don't know what to say. Sarah's voice sounded hollow. You lied to me. For months. Even if your intentions were good, you lied. I know. We're supposed to be partners. In everything. That's what marriage means. I know, he said again, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how wrong I was. I should have told you from the beginning. We should have figured it out together. Yes, we should have. Sarah felt tears prick her own eyes now. Your brother, God, David. I know Tyler has his problems, but I would never have wanted your mother to lose her house. We could have figured something out. We could have talked about it. I was ashamed, David admitted. Ashamed that my brother got us into this mess. Ashamed that I couldn't fix it on my own. Ashamed that I might not be able to provide for you the way I promised I would. I never asked you to be the sole provider. I work too, we're a team. I know, I've been an idiot, a prideful, stupid idiot. They sat in silence for a while, both crying now. Sarah felt overwhelmed by competing emotions, anger at David's deception, sympathy for the impossible position he'd felt trapped in, fear about their financial situation, relief that at least he hadn't been unfaithful. How bad is it? She finally asked. Financially, I need to know everything. David wiped his eyes and nodded. Okay. Full disclosure, no more secrets. Our savings is gone. We have about $2,000 left in the emergency fund. The personal loan I took out has a balance of $45,000 at 12% interest. Our monthly payment on that is about $800. Sarah did the quick mental math. Combined with their mortgage, car payments, and regular expenses, they were definitely stretched thin. No wonder David had been so stressed. But with the partnership, my salary goes up by about 60%, plus the profit sharing, which should add another $20,000 to $30,000 a year. We can pay off the loan aggressively, rebuild our savings. It'll take maybe 2 years to get back to where we were, but we can do it. If Morrison doesn't find out about the freelance work? David flinched. Yeah, if that doesn't happen, you need to stop. Immediately. No more side jobs. I already did. I finished my last freelance project 2 weeks ago. I'd been planning to stop anyway once the partnership came through. I just had to make it to the finish line without getting caught. Sarah thought about this. And the meeting tomorrow? At noon? Signing the partnership papers. Making it official. Once I'm a partner, the non-compete clause is different. I won't be an employee anymore. I'll be an owner. The whole power dynamic changes. So if you can just get through tomorrow without anyone finding out, you're in the clear. Essentially, yes. Sarah leaned her head back against the seat, closing her eyes. This was all so much to process. Part of her wanted to yell at David, to tell him how betrayed she felt by all the lying. But another part of her understood the impossible situation he'd felt trapped in. Tyler had always been trouble. Sarah had warned David about lending him money years ago. But David loved his brother, loved his mother, and had felt obligated to help. Could she really fault him for that? And the freelance work, yes, it had been risky and technically wrong. But he hadn't been doing anything illegal or unethical. He'd just been trying to earn extra money to pay off a debt that had been crushing them. Was it really so different from her own earlier behavior tonight, tracking his location and showing up at his hotel? They'd both been acting out of fear. They'd both been keeping secrets. They'd both been trying to protect each other in their own misguided ways. I checked your location tonight, Sarah said quietly, opening her eyes. I invaded your privacy because I was scared and suspicious, so I'm not exactly in a position to judge you for your choices. David reached over and took her hand. We're a mess, retry continue, aren't we? A laugh bubbled out of Sarah, surprising them both. It was a slightly hysterical sound, but genuine. We really are. I love you, David said, squeezing her hand. I know I have a terrible way of showing it lately, but I do. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I nearly ruined everything because I was too proud and too scared to just be honest with you. I love you too, Sarah replied, even though you're an idiot. A complete idiot, he agreed. We need to make some changes, Sarah said, her voice becoming more serious. Real changes. No more secrets, no matter how well-intentioned. We need to talk about everything. Money, family problems, all of it. Promise me. I promise. Complete transparency from now on. I'll even give you all the passwords to our bank accounts, the loan account, everything. You should know where every penny goes. And I promise to trust you more. To come to you with my worries instead of jumping to conclusions and tracking your GPS like some kind of stalker. David managed a weak smile. Deal. Although maybe keep the GPS tracking just for emergencies. If I ever get kidnapped, it might come in handy. Sarah laughed again, and this time it felt more natural. Some of the tension in her chest was starting to ease. They still had problems, serious ones, but at least now they were facing them together. Take me home, she said. We can get my car tomorrow. Tonight I just want to go home with my husband. David started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. As they drove through the quiet streets, Sarah's mind was already working through the practical aspects of their situation. She'd want to see all the financial documents, create a detailed budget, maybe even talk to a financial advisor about the best way to tackle the loan. They'd need to have a serious conversation about boundaries with Tyler. No more bailouts without mutual agreement. And they'd need to work on their communication, maybe even see a marriage counselor. But beneath all the practical concerns, Sarah felt something else. Hope. They'd both made mistakes, but they'd also both been trying to protect what they had. That had to count for something. "What are you thinking?" David asked, glancing at her as they stopped at a red light. "I'm thinking that we're going to be okay," Sarah said. "It's going to take work and it won't be easy, but we're going to be okay." "Yeah?" "Yeah." The light turned green and they continued home. Part 6. The next day. Sarah woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she was disoriented. Why was she so exhausted? Then the memories of the previous night came flooding back and she groaned, pulling the pillow over her face. They'd stayed up until nearly 2 in the morning, going through everything. David had pulled up all their financial accounts on his laptop, showed her every transaction, every payment, every dollar of the debt. He'd shown her emails from Tyler, from the lawyer, from his mother. He'd even shown her some of his freelance work, tax returns he'd prepared for small business owners, budget consultations for individuals. Nothing shady, just simple accounting work done in the evenings and on weekends. It had been painful and exhausting, but also strangely cathartic. By the time they'd finally crawled into bed, Sarah felt like she understood the full picture for the first time in months. The weight David had been carrying alone was staggering. No wonder he'd seemed so stressed and distant. Now the smell of coffee was calling her from the kitchen. Sarah dragged herself out of bed, pulled on her bathrobe, and shuffled down the hallway. David stood at the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He looked as tired as she felt, with dark circles under his eyes, but he smiled when he saw her. "Good morning." "Morning." Sarah accepted the mug he handed her and took a grateful sip. "What time is it?" "Almost 9. I was going to let you sleep longer, but I heard you moving around." "I'm surprised you're up." "We didn't get to bed until late. Couldn't sleep." David leaned against the counter, cradling his own mug. "I kept thinking about everything, about the meeting at noon." Sarah studied his face. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," he admitted. "I know it's probably just signing papers, but part of me keeps waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like Morrison is going to suddenly know about the freelance work and the whole thing will fall apart." "How would he find out?" "You said you were careful." "I was. I used a different email address, a separate business name for invoicing, only took clients outside the city. But still. I've been breaking my contract for months. It feels like that kind of thing should have consequences." Sarah set down her mug and moved closer to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You made a mistake. Several mistakes, but you were trying to take care of your family. That counts for something." David held her tight, resting his chin on top of her head. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," Sarah teased gently, "but you're stuck with me anyway." They stood like that for a while, just holding each other in the morning light. Eventually, Sarah pulled back. "What time do you need to leave?" "Around 11:30. The office is only 20 minutes away." "And it's really just signing papers? You're sure this isn't going to turn into a surprise all-day thing?" Christine promised it would be quick, an hour, tops, just partnership agreements, some corporate documents, that kind of thing. David paused. "Why? Did you want to do something?" "I thought maybe we could have lunch after. A real lunch, at that Italian place you like. We can pick up my car from Riverside and then have a proper meal together. When was the last time we did that?" David thought about it. "I honestly can't remember." "Exactly. So it's a date. Sign your papers, make it official, and then we celebrate properly, just the 2 of us." "I'd like that." David smiled, and for the first time in what felt like months, it reached his eyes. A lot. They spent the rest of the morning in comfortable domesticity. David took a long shower while Sarah made scrambled eggs and toast. They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table, talking about ordinary things. the Hendersons' new puppy, the strange noise Sarah's car had been making, whether they should finally replace the ancient couch in the living room. Normal couple conversation. Sarah realized how much she'd missed this. At 11:15, David went to get dressed. Sarah heard him moving around in the bedroom, opening drawers and the closet. When he emerged, he was wearing a crisp white dress shirt and his best suit, the charcoal gray one he'd worn to their wedding reception. "Very official," Sarah said approvingly. "Well, it's an official occasion." David straightened his tie in the hallway mirror, partnership papers and all that. "You look great, very partner-like." He turned from the mirror and kissed her. "I'll text you when I'm done." "Probably around 1 inch?" "Sounds perfect. I'll meet you at the parking lot near the hotel." After David left, Sarah found herself at loose ends. She tried to read but couldn't focus. She turned on the TV but found nothing interesting. Finally, she decided to take a shower and get ready for lunch. She wanted to look nice, to make this afternoon feel like a real celebration. She was blow-drying her hair when her phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "So? What happened last night? You promised to call me." Sarah felt a pang of guilt. In the chaos and emotional intensity of the previous evening, she'd completely forgotten about her promise to Monica. She picked up the phone and called. "Finally," Monica answered. "I've been going crazy. I almost drove to your house this morning. What happened?" "It's a long story," Sarah said, turning off the hairdryer. "I've got time." Sarah gave her the condensed version, the surprise party, David's financial troubles, the confession, the reconciliation. Monica listened with occasional gasps and exclamations. "Wow," Monica said when Sarah finished. Wow, so he wasn't cheating." "Nope, just drowning in debt and trying to hide it from me." "Which, I mean, is also bad, but different bad." "Exactly." Sarah started putting on makeup. "I'm still processing everything. Part of me is relieved, part of me is angry, part of me just feels exhausted." "Understandable. Are you guys going to be okay? Financially, I mean." "I think so. The partnership will help a lot, and now that I know the full situation, I can help manage it. We're going to set up a real budget, maybe cut back on some expenses for a while." "If you need anything." "I know. Thank you." "And the marriage? Are you guys okay?" Sarah thought about this as she applied mascara. "Yeah, I think we are, or we will be. We've got some work to do, but we're committed to doing it together this time." "Good. You two are one of the good ones. It would have killed me if David had actually been cheating." They chatted for a few more minutes before hanging up. Sarah finished getting ready, choosing a blue dress that David had always liked. She checked the time, 12:30. David should be about halfway through the meeting by now. Her phone buzzed again, and she glanced at it, expecting another text from Monica. But it was from David. "Call me. Now." Sarah's stomach dropped at the tone. Something was wrong. She dialed immediately. David answered on the first ring. "Sarah." His voice was tight, strained. "What's wrong?" "What happened?" "I need you to come to the office. Right now." "Why?" "David, you're scaring me." There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely controlled. "Morrison knows about the freelance work. Somehow, he knows." Part 7. Crisis. Sarah's hand trembled as she grabbed her car keys. Her mind was racing, trying to process what David had just told her. Morrison knew. But how? David had been so careful. He'd used a different name, worked with clients outside the city, kept everything separate. The drive to Morrison and Fletcher felt both endless and too short. Sarah's heart pounded as she navigated through the Saturday afternoon traffic. David had sounded devastated on the phone, barely able to speak before he'd had to hang up. He'd just said that Morrison wanted to talk to both of them, that Sarah should come to the office immediately. This was it. Everything was falling apart. The partnership, David's job, their financial recovery plan, all of it was crumbling, and there was nothing Sarah could do to stop it. She pulled into the parking garage beneath the Morrison and Fletcher building and found a visitor spot. The building was mostly empty on a Saturday, just a few cars scattered across the usual sea of spaces. Sarah took the elevator to the 8th floor, where the firm's offices occupied half the building. The reception area was deserted, but Sarah could see lights on deeper in the office. She walked through the empty hallways, her footsteps echoing on the polished floors. She'd been here before for company events and the occasional lunch with David, but it felt different now, cold and imposing rather than professional and sleek. She found them in Morrison's corner office. The door was open, and she could see David sitting in one of the chairs facing the massive desk. His shoulders were slumped, his head down. Mr. Morrison stood by the window, looking out at the city. Another man Sarah didn't recognize sat in the other guest chair, older, maybe in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit. Sarah knocked softly on the doorframe. Morrison turned. "Mrs. Chen, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." There was a third chair against the wall, and David quickly stood to drag it over next to his. Sarah sat, and David immediately took her hand. His palm was clammy. "Mrs. Chen," Morrison began, returning to his seat behind the desk, "I apologize for the urgency of this meeting. I'm sure David has told you that we've discovered some concerning information." "He said you knew about the freelance work," Sarah said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Morrison nodded. "Yes. I should introduce you to Harold Whitman. He's our firm's attorney and handles all employment matters." The other man nodded at Sarah but didn't smile. "Can I ask how you found out?" Sarah asked. Morrison exchanged a glance with Whitman before answering. One of David's freelance clients filed a complaint with the state licensing board. Nothing to do with David's work. Apparently the client was unhappy with their tax bill and tried to claim the preparer was unlicensed or fraudulent. The board investigated and cleared David of any wrongdoing, but in the process, they contacted our firm as his primary employer. David made a choked sound beside her. "I didn't know. I swear I had no idea there was any complaint." "The board just notified us yesterday," Morrison continued. "The timing is unfortunate." "So what happens now?" Sarah asked, still holding David's hand tightly. Whitman spoke for the first time. "That depends. David's employment contract clearly prohibits outside accounting work without written permission from the firm. The penalty for violation is termination and possible legal action to recover any profits made through the unauthorized work." Sarah felt like she'd been punched. "You're going to fire him? And sue him?" "That's certainly within our rights," Whitman said evenly. "But you just made him partner." Sarah's voice rose. "Last night there was a whole party." "The partnership offer was contingent on several factors," Morrison interrupted gently, "including continued good standing as an employee. This situation obviously changes things." David finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "How much did I make from the freelance work?" "Total?" Whitman consulted a document in front of him. "According to the records the licensing board provided, approximately $32,000 over 7 months." "Fine," David said. "I'll pay it back. Every penny. You can garnish my wages, set up a payment plan, whatever you need. Just please don't fire me. I have a loan, a mortgage, responsibilities. I made a huge mistake, but I wasn't trying to hurt the firm. I was just trying to keep my family afloat." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. He steepled his fingers, studying David across the desk. "Why didn't you come to me when your brother got into trouble?" "I would have helped. We could have arranged a loan through the firm, given you a bonus advance, something." "I was ashamed," David said quietly, "and scared. I thought I could handle it on my own. Instead, you violated your contract, put the firm at risk, and broke my trust." Morrison's voice was stern. "Do you understand how serious this is? If word gets out that we have partners moonlighting for competing businesses—" "But I wasn't competing," David interrupted desperately. "I was careful about that. I only took individual clients, small businesses that would never use a firm like Morrison and Fletcher. I made sure there was no conflict." "That's actually true," Whitman admitted, consulting his papers again. "I've reviewed the client list. None of them are current or former clients of this firm, and none of them fit our typical client profile. Morrison sighed heavily. That doesn't change the fact that you lied, David. For months. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah couldn't stay quiet any longer. Mr. Morrison, may I say something? He nodded. My husband made a terrible decision. He should have come to you, should have been honest. But he wasn't trying to cheat anyone or hurt the firm. His brother needed help, family needed help, and David felt trapped. He thought he was doing the right thing by trying to handle it himself. She took a breath. I'm not making excuses for him. What he did was wrong. But I know my husband, and I know he's a good man who made bad choices out of desperation, not malice. Mrs. Chen, Whitman began, but Morrison held up a hand. Let her finish. David has given this firm 8 years, Sarah continued. You said yourself last night that he's exemplary. His dedication, his client relationships, all of it. One mistake shouldn't erase all of that. Yes, he should face consequences. But firing him? Suing him? That seems excessive for someone who's been nothing but loyal to this firm. Morrison was quiet again, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned to Whitman. Give us the room, please. Whitman looked surprised but stood and left, closing the door behind him. Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying both David and Sarah. David, do you know why I wanted to make you partner? David shook his head. Because you remind me of myself 30 years ago, hard-working, dedicated, maybe a little too proud for your own good. When I was about your age, I made some mistakes too. Nothing quite like this, but mistakes nonetheless. And I had a mentor who gave me a second chance. Sarah felt a tiny flicker of hope. I'm deeply disappointed in you, Morrison continued. And honestly, I'm not sure I should do this. Whitman certainly thinks I'm crazy. But I also believe people deserve second chances when they've earned them. Sir? David's voice was barely a whisper. Here's what's going to happen. The partnership offer is rescinded. You'll remain a senior accountant, same position you were in before last night. Your salary stays the same. And you're going to pay back the $32,000 you earned from freelance work, not to the firm, but to charity. Pick 3 organizations, $10,000 each. I'll need proof of donation. Yes, sir. Of course. Additionally, you're on probation for 1 year. Any hint of dishonesty, any violation of firm policy, and you're done. No second chances after this. Am I clear? Crystal clear. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. You're going to earn back that partnership. It might take years. You'll have to prove yourself all over again. But if you can do that, if you can show me that you've learned from this and that my trust isn't misplaced, then maybe someday we'll have this conversation again. David was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I won't let you down. I swear it. See that you don't. Morrison stood, signaling the meeting was over. Take the rest of the day. Come back Monday morning ready to work. We'll announce to the staff that the partnership has been postponed due to some administrative complications. No one needs to know the details. Sarah and David both stood. Mr. Morrison, Sarah said, thank you. For your understanding. For the second chance. Morrison's stern expression softened slightly. I meant what I said last night about David's work. He's talented and valuable. I don't want to lose that if I don't have to. But make no mistake, this is his last chance. They left the office in a daze, walking through the empty hallways to the elevator. Neither of them spoke until they were in the parking garage, standing between their cars. I can't believe it, David finally said. I thought I was finished. I thought we were ruined. You got incredibly lucky, Sarah said. Morrison is a better man than he had any right to be. I know. David leaned against his car, looking completely drained. No partnership. Back to square one. Hey. Sarah moved closer, tilting his face up to look at her. You still have your job. That's what matters. We can figure out the rest. But the loan payments, the debt, Without the salary increase, it's going to take so much longer to pay off. So it takes longer. We'll make it work. Sarah was surprised by her own certainty. We'll budget carefully, cut back where we can. Maybe I'll pick up some overtime at work. We'll figure it out together. Together, David repeated. I like the sound of that. Come on, Sarah said. Let's go get that lunch. I think we both need it. Part 8. Rebuilding. The Italian restaurant was warm and bustling with the Saturday lunch crowd. Sarah and David sat in a corner booth, a basket of bread between them and glasses of red wine they probably couldn't afford but had ordered anyway. After the morning they'd had, they deserved it. I keep replaying it in my head, David said, tearing off a piece of bread. If that client hadn't complained to the licensing board, if they'd done it a week later after I'd signed the partnership papers, if Morrison had found out differently, any number of things could have gone worse. But they didn't, Sarah pointed out. You got lucky. Incredibly lucky. Now you need to make sure it wasn't luck wasted. I know. 1 year probation. 1 year to prove I'm trustworthy again. He took a sip of wine. It's going to be brutal. Morrison's going to be watching my every move. Good. You should be watched. You earned that. David winced but nodded. You're right. I did. Their server appeared with their meals. Penne arrabbiata for Sarah, chicken marsala for David. They ate in companionable silence for a while, both lost in thought. $32,000 to charity, Sarah said eventually. That's going to hurt. It's what I deserved. Hell, it's better than I deserved. Morrison could have sued me for it, or fired me and ruined my reputation. Instead, at least some good will come from my mistakes. Have you thought about which charities? A couple ideas. Maybe something for families dealing with legal troubles, since that's how this all started. And maybe something for financial literacy, helping people avoid the kind of debt trap we fell into. I like that, Sarah said. And the third? David smiled slightly. I was thinking something local. Maybe the food bank. We've been lucky enough to never need it, but I know a lot of people aren't so fortunate. They discussed the details of their finances over lunch, something they'd never really done before. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened a notes app, and they started listing